Chapter 1. Morning Chores. The day for a medieval servant began long before the household awoke. Even as the first faint light of dawn brushed the sky with soft hues of pink and blue, the servants were already stirring in their modest quarters, tucked away in the shadowed wings or basement levels of the manor house or castle. The air was cool and still, carrying a faint chill that clung to stone walls and wooden beams. The world outside was quiet, save for the occasional crowing of a rooster or the distant bleating of sheep. This was a time of solitude and preparation, a moment before the bustle of the day would unfold. The first task, and perhaps the most vital, was to kindle the fires. In the great hearths of the kitchen and the main hall, the cold stones needed to be warmed, not just for comfort, but for the practical purpose of cooking and heating water. The servant assigned to the hearth would carefully gather dry kindling and wood, often salvaged from the previous day's fire or stored in a cool, dark shed. Lighting a fire was no simple matter. There were no modern lighters or matches. Instead, the servant might use flint and steel, striking sparks carefully onto a small bundle of dry tinder. The sparks would catch, and with gentle blowing, the flames would grow slowly, licking at the kindling until the fire was steady and warm. The warmth spread gradually, casting flickering shadows on the rough stone walls. The soft crackle of burning wood was one of the few sounds in the stillness of early morning. This slow, deliberate task required patience and care, for a fire that failed to catch meant a cold kitchen and delayed preparations for the day. Once the fires were burning steadily, other servants would begin fetching water. Wells were often located outside the main house, sometimes a short walk away. Buckets, heavy and wooden, were lowered into the cool depths, then hauled up filled with water that was dark and still. The sound of water sloshing gently in the buckets was a quiet accompaniment to the morning's work. Water was essential for many tasks, washing, cooking, and cleaning, but it was never taken for granted. Each bucket was heavy, and the journey back and forth was slow and steady, a physical reminder of the effort required to maintain even the simplest comforts. In the kitchen, preparations for the day's meals began. The cook, often assisted by several kitchen maids, would start by grinding grain into flour. This was done using a heavy stone quern, a slow and repetitive motion that could take hours. The rhythmic grinding was almost meditative, the coarse flour slowly accumulating in a wooden bowl. Vegetables, often root crops like onions, leeks, and carrots, were peeled and chopped with care. The knives were simple but sharp, and the kitchen smells began to shift. Cooking pots, heavy and blackened from years of use, were filled with water or broth and set over the fire heat. Pottage, a thick stew of grains, vegetables, and sometimes bits of meat or fish, was a staple. It simmered slowly, the heat coaxing flavors to mingle over many hours. Meanwhile, other servants attended to the cleaning of the household. Floors, often made of packed earth or rough stone, needed sweeping. Brooms were simple bundles of twigs tied together, and the sweeping was a slow, methodical task. Dust and ashes from the hearth were gathered and removed, carried outside to be discarded. The rooms themselves were dim, lit only by small windows covered with oiled parchment or wooden shutters. The light was soft and muted, casting gentle shadows that moved with the flicker of the fires. The air was often thick with smoke from the hearth, a constant presence that stung the eyes and made breathing slightly difficult. In the servants' quarters, the day's routine was already underway. Some servants might dress the lord and lady of the house, a task requiring patience and precision. The ladies' gowns were layered and heavy, made of wool or linen, sometimes embroidered with delicate patterns. Dressing took time, with laces to tie and pins to secure. Others prepared the lord's chambers, making beds with rough woolen blankets and feather-stuffed mattresses, if available. Chamber pots were emptied and cleaned, and basins of water set out for washing. Throughout the manor, the servants moved quietly, but with purpose. There was little room for rest or leisure in these early hours. The day's work was long and demanding, and the servants knew that once the household began to stir, their tasks would multiply. As the sun slowly rose higher, the sounds of the household would begin to change. The lord and lady might rise and begin their own routines, but the servants would remain busy behind the scenes, ensuring that the house ran smoothly. The morning chores were the foundation of the day. Without the fires lit, the water fetched, and the kitchens prepared, the household could not function. It was a world of slow, steady labor, of small tasks repeated with care and diligence. This daily rhythm required endurance and quiet strength. Chapter 2: Endless Cleaning. Cleaning in a medieval household was a task without end. It was a constant, quiet rhythm of work that shaped the daily lives of servants. Unlike modern homes with vacuum cleaners and running water, medieval cleaning required physical effort, patience, and a keen eye for detail. The servants moved slowly but steadily through their chores, knowing that even the smallest crumb or speck of dust was a reminder that their work was never truly finished. The nature of medieval cleaning. In the grand stone halls and timber-framed rooms of a medieval manor or castle, cleanliness was both a necessity and a challenge. Floors were often made of stone or packed earth, covered with rushes or straw to provide warmth and comfort underfoot. These rushes were replaced periodically, but until then they trapped dust, dirt, and debris. Sweeping was not just about tidying, it was about maintaining a livable environment. Servants used simple tools, brooms made from bound twigs, rough cloths for wiping surfaces, and wooden scrapers to remove stubborn dirt. The work was repetitive and required endurance. From early morning until late evening, servants tended to the hearth ashes, swept floors, cleaned tables, and washed utensils. The pace was slow, deliberate, and methodical. Sweeping the stone floors. One of the most common chores was sweeping the stone floors. The broom was a humble but essential tool, often handmade by binding twigs or straw to a wooden handle. The servants' movements were rhythmic and unhurried, sweeping dust and dirt into small piles to be gathered and removed. The dust motes floated gently in the shafts of sunlight that filtered through narrow windows, creating a quiet, almost magical atmosphere. Each sweep stirred the air softly, and the servant moved with care, mindful not to scatter the dust too widely. The stone floors, worn smooth by countless footsteps, bore the marks of daily life, small cracks, uneven patches, and the faint stains of spilled food or drink. Sweeping was not a one-time task, but a continuous effort. The servants returned to the floors multiple times a day, maintaining a constant state of order amidst the inevitable mess of daily living. Ashes and hearth cleaning. The hearth was the heart of the medieval home, providing warmth and a place to cook. But it also produced ashes and soot that needed regular cleaning. Servants raked out the cold ashes, carefully gathering them into wooden buckets or metal pans. This task required both care and strength. The ashes were heavy and dusty, and the servants worked slowly to avoid stirring up too much dust. The hearthstones were scrubbed and swept clean, ensuring the fire could burn efficiently the next day. Interestingly, these ashes were not simply discarded. They were often reused in other household tasks, such as cleaning greasy pots, or even as a rudimentary soap substitute. The resourcefulness of medieval households meant that nothing was wasted. Wiping and polishing surfaces, wooden tables, benches, and shelves were wiped down regularly with rough cloths, often dampened with water or a mixture of water and vinegar. This helped remove dust, food crumbs, and sticky residues. The cloths themselves were washed frequently, a task often assigned to female servants specializing in laundry. Laundry was a major chore in medieval households, involving hand-washing garments and linens in tubs or nearby streams, sometimes with the addition of natural cleaning agents like ash or fermented urine to create lye for removing stains. Polishing metal utensils and candlesticks was another slow, careful task. Servants used cloths and powders made from natural materials to bring a gentle shine to the household items, mindful that these objects were valuable and often passed down through generations. Laundry and clothing care. While cleaning the household interior was vital, maintaining clean clothing and linens was equally important. Laundry was almost exclusively a female task, managed by a senior laundress in large households. Washing clothes involved soaking, scrubbing, and rinsing by hand, often in cold water. The process was labor-intensive and time-consuming. Clothes were hung outdoors to dry on lines or bushes, weather permitting. In winter, laundry was dried near the hearth, but this posed risks of fire and dampness. Medieval people understood the importance of cleanliness for health, even if their knowledge of germs was limited. Changing linen undergarments frequently was considered essential, as these garments were closest to the skin and helped keep the body clean. The challenge of hygiene without modern conveniences. Without running water or modern cleaning products, medieval servants had to rely on natural materials and ingenuity. Water was fetched from wells or streams and carried carefully to the household. Soap, when available, was often made from animal fats and ashes, a harsh but effective cleaner. For personal hygiene, medieval people bathed less frequently than they do today, but they did wash exposed parts like hands, face, and feet regularly. Public bathhouses existed in towns, and herbal remedies were used to keep skin and hair clean. In the household, cleaning was a way to maintain order and health, but it was also a reminder of the limits of medieval technology and the hard work required to live comfortably. The endless cycle. The cleaning never truly ended. As soon as one task was finished, another awaited. Dust settled again, ashes accumulated, and floors grew dirty with footsteps. Servants accepted this endless cycle as part of their daily lives. Their slow, methodical work created a rhythm, a quiet, steady pulse that kept the household functioning. It was a life of patience, endurance, and constant care.